Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize your neighborhood. Now pray for the soul of this explorer. It's time for 31 Days of Horror. Oh, hello. Welcome back to the 31 Days of Horror. I'm Terence McGuana, and on today we're going to look at John Carpenter's Vampires from 1988. Jack Crow is the leader of a group of vampire hunters who are funded by the Catholic Church. After Jack's crew are wiped out by Master Vampire Valak, he is in a race against time to stop the vampires from finding a mysterious cross that can allow these bloodsuckers to live in the daylight. In the late 1990s, I just became absolutely obsessed with John Carpenter as a director. I mean, I'd always been familiar with his work such as, Halloween, Prince of Darkness, They Live, stuff like that. But in the 90s, I just wanted to know everything about this man and his work. And I got right into some of his more obscure stuff, such as Dark Star, Assault on Precinct 13. And I must have watched Escape from New York and Escape from LA on a continuous rotation. I absolutely adore John Carpenter's films. I think he's one of the best modern film directors of all time. I take myself back to 1998. When this film was just about to come out, and I mentioned on a previous video, The People Under the Stairs, that I used to watch this television show, Box Office America. I remember when they first showed the trailer for John Carpenter's Vampires, and I was so excited about this film. Not many folk I knew at the time were really excited about this film. More people were excited about Pleasantville and What Dreams May Come, which were the sort of contemporary films at the time. But no, I could not wait to see Vampires. I really couldn't wait to see what John Carpenter would do with the vampire genre. And to be honest, when I eventually got to see it, which was about 4 months later, because the strange thing, this movie took a year to come out in the UK, right? It did quite well in the American box office, but for some reason the distributors had maybe it was a smart move to release it 1 year later in the UK. That was just awful. I couldn't wait a whole year to watch Vampires. So I plumped for a DVD pirate. The very first time I'd ever seen a DVD was on a pirate video with John Carpenter's Vampires. I got that up the Barras and I was so pleased with myself when I got that. And it was a decent copy as well because it was lifted straight off of a DVD. So I was really chuffed with myself and I went home and watched it. And to be perfectly honest with Vampires, I wasn't that taken by it, but it was one of those films that, when you get really excited about a film and you just won't allow yourself to be disappointed. Like when you saw Kingdom of the Crystal Skull for the first time and you came out the cinema and you were like, yeah, that was good, wasn't it? That was good. Or Matrix Reloaded, yeah, that was good, wasn't it? It was kind of like Tron, except, and then half an hour later you're just like, oh, that was awful. That was really awful. Well, I felt that way about John Carpenter's Vampires at the time. I didn't feel that it was awful, but I felt it was a disappointment. I expected something more original, even though the film itself does sort of bend genres here, where you've got the Sam Peckinpah style western. There are parts of this film that makes you think of, the Wild Bunch, or The Searchers, some of the old John Ford movies. It does bend the western with the vampire story, but not as good as Near Dark did it. Near Dark really did it, whereas Vampires, it doesn't feel like John Carpenter's he's not in his A game here. And but as time has went on and his horror films have got worse and worse, in my humble opinion, Vampires seems a lot better now. At the time, I don't think I was that enamoured with it, but I wouldn't allow myself to dismiss it. The music is fantastic. I think it's one of John Carpenter's best scores of recent. What is this? 20 odd years later, right? So it's not that recent. My goodness, where's time gone? As I watch it now, I do see a lot more value in it. It has one of the best kills in any John Carpenter film. I'm not sure how they pulled this one off. I need to look this one up.
And you, don't go anywhere.
Okay.
I got plans for you. There you go. Good.
Yeah, that is brilliant. I just love that. I mean, I'm not mad for gore, but when it's done well, when it looks as exciting as that, when it looks really realistic. I mean, what can I say about being realistic? How many people have I split in two in my life? Zero, right? Well, as far as you know, right? But that just looks amazing to me. That was a really good effect shot. And one thing, I prefer modern day vampire movies. I'm not one for the big castles and children of the night, you know, all that stuff, right? I'm not really into the gothic horror too much. So when I think of my favourite vampire movies, they tend to be more modern. And vampires, when that was coming out, it's like, yeah, we've got this badass team of mercenaries taking out vampires. That would be really cool. And obviously for certain people out there who have an affinity for vampires being just completely and utterly beastly, this is the one. The vampires in this have no, there's no romance in this. You know, they even have a scene where the character, Jack Crow, even sort of goes, what do you expect? You think they all live in castles? They're all afraid of garlic and all this nonsense. He even has this sort of moment where he sort of criticises the vampire mythology, and I like that. I do like when they do that, and it feels natural. It doesn't feel like they're just hitting you with exposition, although there are a few scenes where the characters are explaining that the master vampire has this psychic link with this prostitute that they've taken along, as you know, so that they can glean information from her. And the way that they tell it to each other, it's almost like, you know, you do understand that the vampires have a psychic link to the, you know, and I mean, these guys are professional vampire killers. Do they need to explain that to each other? Do they need to explain to each other that? No, of course not. They need to explain it to us, and that just felt kind of lazy to me. There's a lot of misogyny, and I would say kind of homophobic kind of language in this film, which, right, it's the characters, right? The characters are not very nice. More in the tradition of the Sam Peckinpah protagonists that this film is clearly leaning into. And also, when you look back at one of John Carpenter's most famous hero characters, or anti-heroes, Snake Plissken, you know, there was always that scene in Escape from New York where there was a woman being assaulted and Snake Plissken just walks right by. These are those kind of characters. These are anti-heroes. They're not goody two-shoes characters, and I'm fine with that. You know, I'm not one of these people that every hero has to be an out-and-out good guy. You know, it's good to have people who are unusual characters. They're, you know, they are the protagonist, and that's it. You know, the anti-hero, something like that, and I'm totally fine with that. And that's what I like about this film, is that I don't come away liking these characters, but I do enjoy their adventure. I do enjoy seeing them succeed. Because they're out to kill vampires. That's the basic premise of the film. I know it's about vampire hunters killing vampires, you know, and I don't sit and question that. But yeah, this film, I like it. I like its kind of laid back, breezy style. It's not too original, but at the same time, and it's not got a lot of surprises, but I do find it very entertaining. I do find the sequences when they're taking out the vampires in it are brilliant, every single one of them. The ending to this is rather underwhelming, where they have this part where the vampires are running away, right? And I'm not trying to spoil it, but there is a part where they're running away and they just go to these really cheap dissolves. We're choking at the bit for a big action set piece. This is the finale, and they go to this dissolve, this horrible dissolve, which kind of just speeds everything up so we can get to the end. Kind of reminds me of the Cannonball Run 2, where they decide, well, we're not going to even have a race, we're just going to have this horrible cartoon while we play Menudo at the end of it. That is just robbery. It's when they do that in films, they rob the audience of a decent action set piece. Maybe they were running out of money, you know, they had to cut a few pages of the script, who knows, cut a few storyboards out. We may find out one of these days, but yeah, it just feels kind of rushed to the end. And yeah, I don't know if I would recommend John Carpenter's vampires. If you're a mad John Carpenter fan, you've seen this film dozens of times, right? You might even bemoan this was the beginning of his downfall. I don't think so. I don't think John Carpenter ever had a downfall. I don't think he ever had a decline. I love Escape from LA. I really enjoyed Ghosts of Mars. Ice Cube was badass in that, right? I love Ghosts of Mars. I might see it in the cinema. I might see Ghosts of Mars in the cinema, and people were walking out. You know, how often do you get to see a John Carpenter film in the cinema, especially a brand new one, and people are walking out? Oh, just bamboozles me. But yeah, and I even liked The Ward with Amber Heard. I thought that was a good film as well. Yeah, but vampires, I would say it's one of those middle of the road John Carpenter films. It's not They Live, it's not Halloween, right? It's not Escape from New York. But yeah, it's an okay film. I would say it's okay. I've probably got more love for it than other people, just because I remember being so pumped to see it. And the cast are fine. James Woods, he plays an obnoxious character, which he's really good at, and he handles a lot of the sort of action scenes quite well. Daniel Baldwin, you just kind of think, did they not want Alec Baldwin? Right? He's okay. He's alright. It's probably the best thing I've ever seen that guy do. Cheryl Lee from Twin Peaks, she's okay. She doesn't get a lot to do, to be honest, except just play the victim in this, where it's really weird, how she's getting slapped about by Daniel Baldwin one minute, and then they're off as a couple another. It's just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think that's what I'm thinking. The film looks as though there's things missing from it. It looks like there's some character development between those two that's definitely missing. There are some good things in John Carpenter's vampires, but if I put myself in your shoes, I would say that you might find it a bit of a dud. If you like this video, click like. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscription button. If you want an update, ring the bell. Or you could just wait till tomorrow. There'll be another horror film coming this way, right? Adios, amigos and amigas.